everybody. It is me, Gary Vaynerchuk. Die Hard Dialogue is here. Really exciting episode. Once again, I will come in sad and salty as my Jets lost again to the Eagles. And we have a great show for you. I'm incredibly honored, given that I am 46 years old. My counterpart to the Jets-Saints game is an individual that I watched throughout my entire childhood. What's great about kickers is they can actually be there your entire childhood. And a real legend. I actually recall very vividly as a real young child being fascinated that the longest field goal of all time was 63 yards, and it was done by the Saints. I always remembered, which was weird for me and exciting because in the 80s, when I started watching football in 82, the 80s, the Saints were really a very bad football team. And I thought it was cool that they had something like that field goal. And this gentleman makes me think of the Saints quite a bit. I also recall vividly his 60-yard field goal, which I thought was super cool. Morten Andersen is going to be my counterpart here. Before we get to him, Jessie is here. She's in a good mood because her Patriots continue to put a lot of momentum on the board. We were saying off camera while we were getting set up, the Jets have been rebuilding for a decade and really, for all intents and purposes, 40 years. The Pats rebuild, they decided, would be 8 months. I was very happy when they were 2-4. I pontificated on this show how I couldn't wait for Belichick to be exposed with another Brady run and the Pats not making the playoffs. The tides have turned aggressively, but I think that has more to do with their schedule. I still don't believe in this Patriots team, but Jessie, I believe in you, and I'm glad you're on the show again.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate you, man. Always love being here for Die Hard Dialogue. And don't forget, everybody, free-to-play listener league. This week's prize is a 1966 Philadelphia Dick Butkus rookie card. Really cool. Be sure to check the DK Discord, DK social media for the link to join that contest. And speaking of, you mentioned Morten Andersen. He's here with us, obviously a legend, NFL Hall of Fame kicker, host of Great Dane Nation, the podcast. Being a Hall of Famer, you've had some pretty good connections. You've had some pretty cool guests. You've had Roger Goodell, Joe Namath, and Dick Butkus, the guy whose rookie card we're giving away in our listener league.
Yeah, we've had some good guests. I've lost count at 35 Pro Football Hall of Famers.
Wow.
This week's guest, Anthony Munoz,
what a beast.
The only true Cincinnati Bengal in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So it's been an amazing ride. We got some big guests coming in on the new year, starting next year early and finishing this year strong. So it's been fun, man. It's been humbling to listen to these guys, and they have a couple of things in common. I think across the board, none of them were handed the gift, right? None of them were handed, here you go, here's a gold jacket and a bronze bust in Canton. They all had their backs against the wall. Their hands weren't above their head right from the start. Came from tough neighborhoods a lot of times, broken homes, addiction, abuse, alcoholism, and I can go on and on. So the stories that they tell are powerful. They're like, it's validation that with some talent and with some skill and hard work and mentorship, Anthony Munoz talks about this greatly, and he's one of those guys that does this with his foundation, is to kind of pass it on to the next generation. So it's just really inspiring to listen to these guys, take the helmet off of them. And I think what the advantage I have, because I played for so long, to your point, I played so long that I have enough credibility with these guys. I either played with them or against them. So it's almost like we shared a locker room for a long time. So
it's cool. I'm
able to ask some questions and maybe a journalist is not able to get an answer to, which kind of gives me a little bit of an advantage. So it's been a real joyful ride, man. Really inspiring for me and COVID friendly, if you will.
Well, Morten, Gary might be wondering how your leg's feeling. The Jets have had some kicker issues. Are you available, man?
Sure. Well, when Gary was talking about the Jets and the Saints, Saints being so bad in the early 80s, late 70s, it's really just a mirror for what's happening in New York, because the Jets are the Saints of the late 70s, early 80s. That's really
You know, it's funny, more the Jets and Giants, neither team made the playoffs in the 70s. Football, professional football in New York in the entire decade of the 70s was disastrous. I got duped though, Morton. My first season watching every game was the 82 season where the Jets went to the AFC Championship game and lost to the Dolphins 14-0 in the Mud Bowl when A.J. Dewey had all those Richard Todd interceptions. So I thought things were going to be great. As a matter of fact, ironically, back to our Jets-Saints connections, Richard Todd was traded a couple years later to the Saints.
I hung out with him a lot. Great guy.
Great dude. And Jets drafted Kenny O'Brien. And Kenny O'Brien had a nice run for the Jets. Made the playoffs in 85, 86, 91. And by Jets standards, those are fairly good runs. But more before we get into Jets-Saints, I had Joe Namath on my podcast, which you can imagine was a thrill for me. And I threw him an off-speed pitch. Here's Joe Namath. I am as diehard as I've watched every play of a New York Jets game since 1982. To give you context, I've been to every playoff game that they've been.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Sorry.
I actually like the climb. I don't have respect for Jessie and her ilk. All these Boston fans that win so much. I
hear you struggle.
Yeah,
this
brother.
Is therapy, man. I got you.
Not only
embrace the world of suck. Embrace it. You're embracing the world of suck, and you're living right in it. I can guarantee you that.
It's actually better than that. I really connect with you. You know, I was born in the Soviet Union. I lived in a studio apartment with 77 family members when I first came to this country. I really believe that adversity is the foundation to success.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously sports is an outlet and escapism, but I genuinely enjoy the process of trying to be a diehard fan. It's loyalty, I think, is very underrated. You watch all the people. When I was in high school, the amount of people that wore Chicago Bulls jerseys, you know, and then they've all disappeared.
Yeah.
I didn't see a Golden State Warriors jersey in Oakland, let alone outside of it my whole life. And oh, by the way, eventually you won't see Patriot jerseys anywhere. And they sucked back to that generation that
they were bad with Grogan.
Yeah, anyway, so I asked Joe, my opening question was actually about the 1970 season, 69-70. It wasn't even about the Super Bowl season. I asked him why we lost to the Chiefs in the playoffs on their road to Super Bowl IV at home when I think he threw 5 interceptions. So I'm going to ask you a very similar question because I love adversity. You had one of the iconic, I'm just so honored to have you here because you are the kicker for my generation, truly. The first name I would think of if I think of a kicker. I'm actually genuinely curious about this. What was the most disappointing missed kick of your career? Really, I want to know the one that really upsets you. I think that's so human, and I'm just genuinely curious.
I would say a 26-yarder from the left hash in Miami in the Super Bowl. We weren't going to win the game anyway, but I think it's the shortest miss, unless Gostkowski just missed one recently that was shorter. You know, to miss a 26-yard field goal, you got to do a lot of stuff wrong. You really do. And especially on a stage like that, I had made a field goal, first points of the game. We're playing Denver Broncos.
I remember.
1999, so it's following the 98 season. I had just 2 weeks earlier put foot to ball and got us into the Super Bowl against the Vikings.
I'm going to cut you off for a second. I apologize.
Sure.
At that exact moment, as you do that remarkable thing, I am in Denver, Colorado, with a 104 temperature. Thank God COVID wasn't around then. Because the Jets were playing the Broncos and the Jets were up 10-0 late in that game.
Yeah, I remember.
That should have been us versus you.
Could have been.
Very upset. Thank you.
Know.
Anyway, nonetheless.
Yeah.
You lined up.
I lined up and the mic was wide open. You could hear me F-bomb before I got to the ball, which means I knew that I was going to be in the wrong place at the moment of truth.
What happens in that scenario, especially?
You know, it's a mind blow, really.
Yeah.
You train and you rehearse to make your positive behavior dominant, and then you still somehow the human element enters into it. And you know why do we miss free throws and extra points? And why do we miss 3-inch putts?
Anything. It's
you
right.
know what? I don't know. We're humans. We're not robots. And So that was the most distasteful one. We lost by,
a lot of points.
17,
Yeah.
but still, you feel like the momentum kind of, the air went out of the balloon.
Talk to me about, back to momentum. The Saints this year had that big win.
Oh, yeah.
Against Tampa, and obviously
injuries.
Yeah.
Injuries. When you have 14 starters that can't go on Sunday, I listen, I adhere to the notion next man up, but at some point the next man up is not going to be as good as the guy that's sitting on the bench now or sitting in the training room.
That's right.
So we were just decimated by injuries at key positions, the receivers, the line, the quarterback. I mean, we just are not able to, you can't next man up the quarterback. You just can't do it.
I agree.
It's too difficult to learn that position. I
get so upset that people listen. It's true, next man up. And the NFL, everyone has injuries, but do they? Because the reality is if you look at the last 30 seasons, the Jets are on their 7th and 8th safety. 7th and 8th.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, they're so. I'm like, do you understand what literally our starting safeties were on practice squads of other teams a month ago?
Yeah.
It's hard.
It's really hard. The kicker, Will Lutz, he's out for the year. So you're playing musical kickers. That's never good. No,
we're on our third kicker this season ourselves.
Yeah. So it's just very difficult to put a roster together and any type of continuity when you have those amount of injuries. And so I think that's what's happened to the Saints. And they're not going to because you have injuries. They're not going to say, well, oh, geez, you don't have to play the Tampa Bay Bucks now because you're hurt. The schedule is the schedule, and we have a pretty tough one. So, yeah, I that's the short answer. We're just decimated.
What do we have on the data on this week?
Yeah, so Saints 5.5 point road favorites over the Jets. The total's sitting at 42.5. Saints minus 225 on the money line. Jets are plus 185. And sort of to your point here, New Orleans, which is typically a high scoring team, right? They've only managed 23 points total in their last 2 games. The Jets defense is pretty good, a bright spot for the Jets. So what do we think? Can the Saints offense put up enough points on the Jets?
Jess, I'm not sure where you found that sentence. The Jets defense is not a bright spot for the Jets. We're the worst rated defense in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, they're allowing an average of 30 points per game. I've seen some bright spots from the Jets defense. They've had some good sacks here, brighter than the offense.
They have no sacks. They can't get a sack if they fucking paid somebody.
Gary, they're the only thing on the they're brighter than the offense.
I actually think that's not true. Last week against a decent Eagles defense, they scored a touchdown in the first 3 drives. Now, and back to what Morten was saying, the Jets are probably going to be without both of their starting wide receivers. Corey Davis is out for the year now. And we're hearing rumblings about, of course, the only actual bright spot, the Jets' bright spots were Elijah Moore and Michael Carter. Their running back and wide receiver drafted 2nd and 4th round. You start dreaming, okay, next year, you got 4 picks in the top 40 this year. Can we start doing, the thing that turns around a franchise, nailing draft picks? The fact that Zach Wilson was out during that time, and now Zach's back, but now Michael Carter and Elijah Moore are hurt. So the Jets scored 3 touchdowns on their opening 3 drives last week. Now, the Jets were also the first team in 40 years to score 3 touchdowns on their opening 3 drives and have only 18 points. Very ironic having the greatest kicker of all time with us on here, that we literally missed 2 extra points and then had to go for 2 and failed. So we were sitting at 18 after our first 3 touchdowns. But, I will say this. I left the stadium. We lost. It's been a very tough season. We are so banged up. We're so young. It's super disappointing. But I did see a very big actual jump in Zach Wilson last week. It was a different quarterback. He was checking down. He seemed more confident, more comfortable. I like the way he went through his progressions. He did have a ball slip out of his hand, so he threw an ugly pick that, of course, is going to be on there. But it was a slightly better. That's not fair. An actual real step forward. Now you take away his receivers, so I have no idea what's going to happen this week. But
And our defense is pretty good. I mean, the Saints defense is pretty good, and we like to blitz in all kinds of different creative ways that could give a young quarterback
100%.
some headaches. So that's why I'm saying.
What do you see this week? What's your intuition?
So I don't think it's going to be a terribly high-scoring game, but I do think the Saints will win. Do they cover? What was it? 5.5?
5.5. Yep.
This could easily be a field goal game.
I will say this, Morten. I think people really might get caught off guard without Corey Davis and Elijah Moore. I mean, the Jets are you're into real deep waters at the receiver position.
I know.
So I don't see how the Jets score 14 points.
I don't know how you're going to move the ball against that Saints defense.
I agree.
Who's kind of hungry after having, lost to Tampa Bay. They lost to Dallas. I mean, they're ready to. They got to go on the road. I know. Yeah, I like the under, and I like the Saints to win. I don't know if they cut. I don't know.
What do you think, Jess?
Well, Jets are 3-9 against the spread in their last 12 games.
Ew.
So
that's not great.
Yeah. And the Jets haven't covered in 6 of their last 7 games against NFC opponents.
Oh.
So I kind of feel like the Saints are going to cover here. And the Jets are giving up an average of 30.6 points per game. So I actually do think that the Saints will get some points here.
I also think
will they get to the over? I mean, will they get to that over under number?
Yeah, I mean, my prediction for this one is 27-7.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand that. Is Alvin playing?
Yeah. Right? He's supposed to.
I think that's going to be enough. I really do.
Yeah.
Kamara is the X. Yeah. Kamara is absolutely X factor for us because we can use him offensively in so many different ways. We can use him as a receiver. We can use him all kinds of ways. Reverses, screens. We're a pretty good screen team. The Saints.
I love him. I was yelling, screaming at the TV when the Jets were drafting early second round, yelling for the Jets to draft him. We did not. We took Marcus May, who's had a nice career, but
he's not Alvin Kamara, man.
Not Alvin Kamara. Fun fact: Alvin Kamara's first NFL football game of his life was a Jets game in New York.
How did he play?
He didn't. No, I'm talking the first time he ever watched an NFL game.
Oh,
wow.
Now I know that because when my brother and I started an NFL representation business, and the first guy we signed was Alvin Kamara. We unfortunately lost him right after it because we didn't really know the business yet, and we didn't know we could lose our guy. But I watched YouTube videos and saw the backup running back at Tennessee and thought he was special and went down to Tennessee and signed Alvin Kamara.
So you mentioned that's awesome. You mentioned you're in the sports representation business. Now I'm gonna blow your mind. Back in the 80s, I was with IMG.
Yep.
And my agent George Califatis had died on his kitchen floor. Boom, 50 years old, heart attack. So I had no agent. IMG goes, well, we'll give you this guy. I go, no, I don't want another guy. George was my man. So I left IMG and I was searching for an agent. I was getting ready to negotiate a 4-year new contract with the Saints. I met Tom Dempsey, back to your 63-yarder. So Tom is the guy that hit the 63-yarder with the Saints. Tom was working for a credit bureau, like Experian, one of those companies. So we started talking. I said, Tom, I need an agent to finish my contract. He goes, well, I do a lot of negotiations. Let me do it for you. So I hired him as my sports agent. He did a beautiful 4-year contract for me. And when it came down to it, I said, hey, what do you want me to pay you? Because usually you can get up to 3% of the contract. He said, "I'll give me $500." I gave him $500. So that was Tom Dempsey was my agent on one of my contracts.
I love that. Speaking back to the representation business, we also rep tight end / wide receiver Jawan Johnson, who is a beautiful man, a TikTok sensation, and a very unique talent that had a great opening game this year with 2 touchdowns. And I'm excited to see him play against my New York Jets. I'm going to jump into my prediction. I'm going to go 27-10 Saints. I don't think this is going to be a competitive game. I think the Jets are in trouble. Mort?
Yeah, I think it's an under game for sure. So I'll go 20. I think they cover 2 now that I think about it. I'll go 24-3.
Yee.
Ugh.
Yeesh.
All right. Ugly predictions for my Jets. Saints Nation's probably pretty happy because they haven't been happy lately. They've not been playing well. But
They might get a touchdown. It's 24-10. It's too late. I said 3. All right, fine.
we'll let you change it, my friend.
24-10.
Unlike kicking an extra point or a field
Yeah,
goal.
well, you don't get a
There are
redo.
mulligans here.
Don't get mulligans in my
You don't get
business.
mulligans
man.
in your business.
Very seldomly, yes.
Morten, it's an incredible honor. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
And
Cheers.
don't forget to listen to Mort's podcast. Listen to
Great
Great
Dane
Dane
Nation.
Nation.
Yes,
Like,
that's right.
Cheers.
subscribe. Thank you.
my friend.
Must. It's a
Let's keep
must.
it going.
See ya.
All right, on to our next game, Gary. Raiders at the Chiefs. So our Raiders and our Chiefs guests can turn their cameras, turn their audio on. So our Raiders guest is Marcus Mosher, managing editor of RaidersWire. For the Chiefs, we have Ryan Tracy, Locked On Chiefs podcast host and founder of Athletic Matrix.
Going on, everybody?
Marcus, how are you? Ryan, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Men, how are we feeling at this point of the season?
If you're a Raider fan, probably not very good, right? You started off the season really well, 5-2, lost 4 of the last 5 games. This one just feels inevitable, unfortunately. And I think we're going to get into why that's going to be the case here on Sunday.
Right?
You never know. They might hand it away. We need Xanax out here. Who knows?
What have you been seeing the last couple of weeks?
You know, it's been up and down, back and forth. They can't really get out of their own way consistently. The one time that they did was the last time they played the Raiders a couple of weeks ago. So if
What do you think is happening, Ryan? Let me throw a thesis at you. I think that humans by nature are incredibly adaptive. And that leads to certain things like taking things for granted. Or when you have so much good, you have to start like creating new scenarios just to make it interesting. Using football, there was a 2-year period in high school where I was so much better at John Madden football than all my friends that I got bored and I would start taking my defensive linemen off the line before the snap and creating these exotic defenses. What ended up happening was over the next 2 years, I got into bad habits. And as the game evolved, now I sucked because I wasn't playing proper. I had bad habits. I lost my way. I think it's extremely hard when you go to 3 straight AFC championship games, 2 Super Bowls, and are this team, especially with some of the personalities. And I'm not saying bad. I'm saying willing, which I think is a good thing, by the way. I want everybody to hear this. Willing to do commercials, willing to do appearances, willing to do business off the field. I think you've got a really cliche situation where these 7-12 core Chiefs, looking at the upcoming schedule this summer, they're not fired up for week 3 this, week 6 that, week 7 that. And I think they got lulled. And I think the other thing about the NFL that's amazing is it's a copycat league. You know, all of a sudden, 1 or 2 plays that the Niners threw, that Tampa threw, you know, there's a lot of homework these coaches do in the offseason. I think that the Chiefs had a couple core plays that were really tough for teams to figure out for a couple of years that I think defenses have had some slight adjustments to. And it's a great game of chess. And between defenses slightly adjusting and figuring out one of the 2 super plays and a little bit of subconscious, because these are professional, superior professional competitive dudes, subconscious passiveness has given the Chiefs a weird season.
Yeah, you know, I think it's 2% either way is going to cause the game to change outcomes, right? And I think Patrick Mahomes in particular is probably channeling your Madden years because he was so dominant. He was seeing the game so easily. I think the Super Bowl really threw him for a loop, because especially when it was unexpected for Todd Bowles to switch up his own philosophy. These teams go into games expecting what they expect because they know the personnel, they know the staffs. There's a guy that has a system that you know what you're going to get for the most part. When that got flipped on its head, I think it put everything in kind of a pause, like, oh, wait a minute, maybe the work that we've done, the things that have been cooking for us are not going forward. And it's been a struggle since then. And the one time this season that they've looked like the Chiefs of old has been against the Raiders, because Gus Bradley didn't do what Todd Bowles did, and he stuck in his system. And he said, I'm going to be who I am, and you come beat me. And they said, sure.
Marcus, what there was that 37 seconds after the Gruden situation where I was like, ooh, David Carr is really elevating his leadership, and like this could be a monumental moment in his career where he had to really, Gruden's such a big personality. So again, without data, with the way they played, with the way he was acting, I'm like, ooh, this could actually be a good thing for his career. He could step up, become the alpha, and this could be an interesting, an unfortunate situation could really turn into a propeller to the next level for him. It seemed like for a week or so, that felt like a hypothesis that might play out, but the wheels have really come off since then.
And I think that's exactly what happened. I mean, he was the alpha in the locker room. He's who everybody looked up to on that team. And they won their first 2 games without John Gruden, and they were playing really well. And then the Henry Ruggs accident happened, and everything has changed since then. Without Ruggs on the field, they just don't have anybody that can take the top off the defense. And now Darren Waller's hurt, his most reliable weapon in the middle of the field. And when you have an offensive line that's not very good, a rushing attack that's been up and down, and then a defense that's, let's say, below average at best, it's awfully hard to win these games. Now, they've been competitive. They haven't really been blown out in any game. They're just not winning these games they were earlier in the season. So I still think Carr is playing well. I still think this is a good thing for him long-term, becoming more of a leader. But yeah, this Raiders team is good. They're just not good enough to make the playoffs.
I understand. Just back to a little bit more macro, Rye, with you. What, if I asked you right now, like, what's the outcome? Is this a team that's going to lose a first round road playoff game? Or do you see them kind of back to sometimes these kind of teams? They were lollygagging a little bit during the regular season, and, the 2-3 weeks leading up to the playoffs, they start turning it on.
I think what's scary is when you take a look back at the 19 season, they're kind of in a similar situation where you didn't feel like they were hitting on all cylinders. There were problems here and there, and can they put it all together? And then they made that run to end the season, got in the playoffs, and took it up another notch. And then you see what they did to the Niners in that Super Bowl. I won't rule anything out. They could have some missteps. They could end up a wild card and have to fight their way through. If that happens, does the longevity of the last 2 seasons going to back-to-back Super Bowls, does that take its toll and be able to punch through? There are a number of young guys, particularly the rookie classes, contributing a lot this year. Maybe that helps you push through, but it could also go the other way, and they could put it all together and winning ugly, still winning. So it doesn't matter. You just got to move on. And if that's the way it goes, I could see him getting back to the Super Bowl again.
Yeah, I think one of the things, if I'm a Chiefs fan, I mean, who really scares you in the AFC, right? Like, the Chargers, have the extra weight because it's a division rival, but you have some confidence given kind of the historic thing, though they played you well even through the good run. The Bills suck. I've been on this kick the whole time. They stink. They haven't beaten a single team besides you guys, and I think you were worse than you even are right now while you're trying to figure it out. They stink. This propaganda of Mac Jones, the Patriots, is propaganda. They stink. They're going to be like, who? Like Tennessee? That was the game that kind of gave me a little bit of fear on my Patriots stink thing, because that was a really nice win, but they don't scare me. Baker definitely doesn't scare me. The Ravens are all over the place. Like anybody can go to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
Yeah, it's a good year to have a down year.
I think so. I mean, this is the first time I remember being in December. I've been watching football for 40 years and really watching football, like not like really. I'll tell you everything about the 82 season to now, that I truly remember having 10, 12 football teams in my brain that might make the Super Bowl every year, almost every year, at least on one side of the league. There was a clear one, maybe two. If you wanted to get cute, you could go 3 teams that could go. I mean, this year, both sides have who?
Yeah.
I
Somebody
think
step up.
I think the Colts might be the best team in the AFC, and they might not even make the playoffs. You know, it's one of those weird years.
I can't believe you just said that. And you remember this, Jess, I thought the Colts were going to smack Buffalo in Buffalo, dome team and I got laughed at about it, and they beat the living piss out of Buffalo. I'm with you. I still think they're sneaky, but to your point, are they even going to make the playoffs?
They've already got 6 losses, and they've got a pretty tough schedule going the rest of the way. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to win 3 of their last 4 to get in, and they might not do it. But if they do get in, that's a team I think the Chiefs, Ryan, you should be a little bit afraid of.
All right.
And they know them well.
All right. Let's go to the scores.
Yeah.
Jess,
So
what do we got for this?
okay, so Raiders 9.5-point road dogs, Chiefs favored by 9.5 at home. The total is 48. Raiders plus 330 on the money line. Chiefs minus 435.
I'll go ahead and start. The Raiders aren't going to cover the spread. They're going to continue to do what they always do. Gus Bradley's going to sit back in his cover 3, and the Chiefs are going to be able to run the ball. It's just the Raiders are not playing very well right now. So I don't think this is going to be an all that competitive game. The one bet I will say that I really like, Raiders over 18.5 points. Derek Carr in his last 3 games is averaging 28 points against the Chiefs. This seems like a game where they get a couple garbage time touchdowns, but I really like the Chiefs to cover this spread.
On Marcus, on that point, it feels for me, and my brother-in-law is a big Raiders fan. One of my best friends is a big Raiders fan. And, the Jets and Raiders have a fun history where I've always had to hate the Raiders or something. It really does feel to me that Waller's such an enormous part of that. Like, there's that very special thing. Our Kansas City friends have it. That tight end, Phillip Rivers, like that tight end, Ben Coates for Drew Bledsoe. There's certain combos.
Jimmy Graham.
That are just so essential, in my opinion. Doesn't it scare you a little bit from a point standpoint with that scenario being out of the equation?
A little bit, but they've been used to this. They've had Waller out a couple of games this year, and the offense has been fine. Actually, Hunter Renfrow has been really good for them over the last couple of weeks. I just think that's too few of points in this game to bet the under, because there's a chance this is a 35-10 game going into the fourth quarter, and it's just all garbage time the rest of the way. I'd be really nervous about taking the under there.
Right.
I really like what you said, Marcus. I wish I could go with you, but I've seen the Chiefs take too many people for granted and say, oh, we stomped them 3 weeks ago. We don't have to worry about this. And then they let everybody hang in, and it doesn't. I do think that they cover the spread. That's not a concern, but I don't think they hit the over. As a total for the game, I think they let the Raiders hang around. I see it as more as like a 10, 11-point game. 28-17 is what I'm thinking at this point, because at the end of the day, what we saw last week from the Chiefs is when they're not worried, they kind of shut things down and let teams hang around. And that's honestly infuriating for the fan base and tough for me to get used to, but that's what I think is going to happen.
No revenge, Ryan.
What score do you have?
One more time.
What score are you going with, Ryan? Did
I'm
you say
28-17?
Okay.
Jess?
27-14 Chiefs. And this is not going over. Chiefs have only hit the over once in their last 7 games. Like, it's not happening. But also Kansas City has only allowed 9 points in those last 2 matchups. And Broncos and Cowboys, they've been able to score fairly well this season. Right? So like,
yeah, that's where I'm actually going. I think the Chiefs defense is starting to show a little something. And I think without Waller, I don't know. I think this is going to be a week where the Chiefs start this engine. I'm going 30-9.
So Gary has no faith in the Raiders offense. I understand. It's been kind of clunky over the last couple of weeks.
It's a little bit of a combo of, that game that kind of like just wraps up the season.
Yeah.
Waller out, the offense has been a little clunkier. The Chiefs defense is gaining momentum. And I agree with you that they're going to sit back and let the Chiefs do their thing. And so, yeah, that's just where I'm going. But good news, I said the Falcons were going to go into Dallas and get hot. And they lost 45-3. So don't get too scared.
Yeah, the Chiefs have not allowed more than a touchdown in the second half over the last 2 months. So their defense is playing absolutely outstanding. Again, Derek Carr has played pretty well against the Chiefs over the last couple of years. Yeah. So that's the one thing that makes you a little nervous.
I know you love this stuff, Jess. Like the Jets are 3-9 against the NFC over the last 12 years. Who gives a shit? It's very week to week contextual. There's injury. This league is so predicated on momentum, injuries, and not even momentum, right? Like when you think something's going to happen, it goes like, this is a crazy ass league, right? And so I agree with that, but I do think in those prior times that Derek played well, he didn't have Gruden fired in a scandal. He didn't have his pop-topping receiver who was ascending up and have a catastrophic. And I love the way it's a devastating situation. Mm-hmm. But like, there's a lot of emotion because a lot of those guys love that kid. Like, there's a lot of feelings, and the season's over. The Raiders are not feeling like they're going to the playoffs.
I agree. Now, the one thing I will say is a lot of times these quarterbacks like Derek Carr, they play a defensive coordinator so many times. They know exactly what to expect. Like, they're not going to be surprised by what the Chiefs do on defense. It's just, can they execute it?
You have a lot of youngsters on the Chiefs side playing. I mean, and the second half adjustments on the defense have clearly been
very good.
Anyway, Jess, I have a very important client meeting, so I got to wrap up this show.
Okay. All right. Let's thank you guys, Ryan and Marcus, for being on. We appreciate it as always. You guys are awesome. So, Gary, before we go, we got to pick an odds boost. So there was one for the Saints Jets game in honor of Morton.
Yep.
For Saints to have the longest field goal. It's plus 125.
I'm not going to do that because the Jets signed Eddie Pinheiro. I courted him when he was coming out of school for my agency. I think he's a good kicker, and I don't think the Jets are going to score touchdowns. So I'm scared of that. What else you got?
First field goal made is the Saints plus 105.
Give me a Chiefs beat the shit out of the Raiders prop.
Let's see. Chiefs beat the shit out of the Raiders prop. Let me try and find one of those. We have some player props for that game.
Okay.
So there's a Patrick Mahomes quarterback prop, passing and rushing yards, over under 308.5, over minus 115, under minus 115.
I like it.
Okay. Do you like the over or the under?
The over. I think that, no, they're going to run the ball. Actually, what else you got?
Clyde Edwards-Helaire over under 58.5 rushing yards.
That.
Okay.
That I like.
Over.
Boost it. I got to go. Guys, thank you for being on the show. Jess, love you. Feel better. See ya. Everyone.
All right. Sounds good.
If you or someone you know has a gambling problem, crisis counseling and referral services can be accessed by calling 1-800-GAMBLER in Illinois, Indiana, New Jersey, West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wyoming. 1-800-522-4700 in New Hampshire and Colorado. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Idaho. 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa. 1-800-532-3500 in Virginia. 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona. Call and text the Tennessee Red Line at 1-800-889-9789 or call 888-789-7777 and visit ccpg.org/chat for Connecticut. Available to play in Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Michigan, New Hampshire, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, and West Virginia only. Must be 21 years or older or 18 plus in New Hampshire and Wyoming. For entertainment purposes only. No results guaranteed. Void where prohibited. Eligibility restrictions apply. See www.draftkings.com/sportsbook for full details. Odds and lines are subject to change.